Hey everyone, this is Hafizullah Masoudi and you're watching from Code with Hafiz. I welcome you to the second video of this series where we will discuss CSS colors. Now before everything else, I want to say that for you to learn this course better, I recommend you first get some knowledge about HTML, and if you already know what HTML is and how it works, you can continue this course or you can watch my complete HTML5 course for absolute beginners. So I have provided the link to the HTML course in the description of this video. You can find it there. Now first of all, let's create a folder for our project here. So I will do it using my terminal. So let's open terminal here and I will create the project folder in the desktop. So let's cd to desktop, and if you are using Windows or Mac, you can simply go to the file explorer and wherever you like you can create your project folder. So I will create it in my desktop. Now to create a folder, I will say make dir and let's name it CSS projects, and let's give it an underscore and let's press enter and cd CSS projects, and I will open it using Visual Studio Code. So for that I can say code space dot. Now for those of you that don't know what is Visual Studio Code, well, Visual Studio Code is a code editor redefined and optimized for building and debugging modern web and cloud applications. Now of course you can use your operating system's text editor, but it won't highlight the code for you. So Visual Studio Code is a very powerful text editor, and it has many useful extensions that you can install which will make your development process very easy. So let's close the welcome page, and now in here first of all what I will do is create an HTML file. So let's say new file and let's name it index.html. Now let me show you something useful in Visual Studio Code, and that is writing an exclamation mark, and when I press the tab you can see it created us a boilerplate of HTML document for us. So this is possible by an extension which comes by default with Visual Studio Code, and that is emit. So now in here let's change the title of the document. So let's name it CSS projects, and that's all. Now the next part is to open this document in the browser. So let's get back to the terminal and I will write nautilus and then dot to open this directory in file explorer, and now I will run this file in my browser. So let's get back to our text editor now. So guys, in CSS we have multiple ways of defining colors for elements. For example, colors can be specified using predefined color names or RGB values or hex values or HSL values. So for CSS color names we can use the predefined color names, for example black, white, tomato, orange, blue, gray, light gray, etc. So CSS supports 140 standard color names, and if you want to check out all the possible color names you can search in Google for CSS predefined color names, and it will give you all the possible color names. So to show you some examples, let's create a header. So h1, and for the text of the header let's say hello world, and let's declare the style attribute for this, and in here let's give this header a background color. So let's say background color, and for the color let's say for example Dodger blue, and if we save this you can see it got the color for us and it's marking it as this color. So if we get back to the browser now and refresh, now you can see this text has, or header has, the background color of Dodger blue. Now to show you another example, let's press enter here and let's create a paragraph, and let's say some paragraph here. So I will put some lorem ipsum, and let's give this a paragraph style, and I will give it background color, and let's say tomato. And if you save this, get back to the browser, refresh, now you can see it has a tomato background color. So these are all predefined names, and we can see all of them in the Google. So let's get back to the browser and open a new tab, and let's search for CSS predefined color names, and let's go to this first link, which is w3.org. so I will open it. So in here you can see we have all the possible 140 colors in here. So it doesn't show any count in here, but I'm sure there will be 140 colors. So you can check out all the colors here. Now let's get back to our project tab. So to show you more examples, let's get back to Visual Studio Code, and let's press enter here, and let's create another header. So h1, and let's say hello world, and for this one let's also declare a style attribute, and this time we want to color the text of this header, so we can use the color property. And in here let's say, for example, a tomato again, and let's create another one. So I will create a paragraph, and let's say lorem, and for this one let's say style attribute, and let's color this one also, and let's say, for example, orange. Now let's save this, get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see we can also give color to the text. Now next up, we can set the color of borders too. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and in here what I will do is I will create another h1. So let's create another h1, and for this one let's say hello world, and let's declare the style attribute for this, and let's say border. So this is how you can declare a border. So we want this one to be 2 pixels in width, and we want this one to be solid, and for the color let's say violet. And let's save this, get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see it has a nice violet border. So these were colors with their predefined names. So in CSS we can define colors using RGB, hex and HSL values too. So first of all, let's discuss RGB and RGBA values. So an RGB color value represents red, green and blue light sources. So the format would be, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and what I will do is comment all of this code. So let's comment it, and let me show you the syntax of RGB. So it will be like this. We will write RGB and then parentheses, and then will come red, comma, green, comma, blue. So this is the syntax for RGB. So in here you can see we have 3 parameters for an RGB value, and each defines intensity of color between 0 to 255. So the RGB, for example, 255, 0, will be displayed as a red. So to show you this one, let's comment this, and let's create, for example, an h1, and let's say hello world again, and for this one let's say style attribute, and let's say this time RGB, and for the first color, which is red, let's say 255, and then 0. Well, I forgot to mention the color here, so let's say color, and then let's say comma 0. So in here we have the red in its fullest color or fullest value, which is 255, and we have 0 for the green and 0 for the blue. As you can already see, the RGB value is marked as red. So if we go to the browser now, refresh, now you can see we have a red heading. And if we change this one to green, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let me duplicate this one. So instead of green 0, let's say 255, and for the red let's say 0, and for the blue let's duplicate it again. Let's say green is 0 and the last one, which is blue, is 255. So to save this, let's get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see we have our RGB. So for black color we can define all the parameters as 0, and for the white we can define all the parameters as their highest value, which is 255. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let me duplicate this one. So for this one, let's say for example for red 0 is okay, for green 0 is okay, and for this one let's also say 0. So let's save this and you can see it's already marked as black. So for the white, let's change this one to 255 and this one to 255 also. And to see this one better, let's also give this a background color of, for example, red. Now let's get back to the browser, refresh, and you can see this is in black and this text is in white and it has the background color of red. So if you wanna create shades of gray, you can change the value of all parameters a little bit and you will get your shades, but all must be the same value. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and for this black you can see all of them are 0. So if we change this one to, for example, 50, and the other one should be also 50, and this one should be also 50, now we will get a little bit of gray or dark gray. So if you go to the browser now, refresh, you can see it's being colored a little bit as gray. So if we change it more or get a high value, so let's say 150, and this should be also 150, and let's say 150. So if we save this now, get back to the browser, refresh, now you can see it's a light gray and you can get shades of gray like this. Now let's discuss RGBA. So the RGBA color values are an extension of RGB with an alpha channel, which specifies the opacity for a color. So the syntax is like this. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and to show you this one, let's press enter here and let's say RGBA, and in here we have red, comma, green, comma, blue, and then comma, alpha channel. So this alpha channel is a parameter that can take a number between 0.0, which will be fully transparent, and 1.0, which is not transparent at all. So to show you an example of this one, we can change this header in here to RGBA. So let's say RGBA here, and let's put a comma here, and let's say this one should be 0.5. So if we save this now, get back to the browser and watch what happens to this color. So if I refresh, you can see now it has been applied some opacity, and now we have this red dimmed color. Now let's remove this syntax code. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let me comment this. Now next up, what we have is the CSS hex colors. So a hexadecimal color is specified with hash RRGGBB. So to show you this one, let's say hash, and then we have red, and then we have green, and then we have blue. So to show you practically this one, let's copy this header from here, and I will comment these other headers here. So let me comment them, and let's paste it at the top. So for this one, let's remove the RGBA, and let's say for example hash, and for the red color let's say FF0000, and let's save this and get back to the browser, and if I refresh, now you can see we have a red header. So in here you can see that a hexadecimal value can be between 00 and FF, same as decimal, which was 0 to 255. So for complete red it can be hash FF0000, where FF is the highest hexadecimal value and other colors are 0, so 0 is the lowest value. So for complete green we can define the red 00 and the green FF. So let's save this, get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see we have a green header. And for blue we can make the green 00 again, and for the last two values we can use FF. So let's save this, get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see we have a blue heading. So in here also for black you can declare the value all 0, and for white you can declare all the values to the highest value, which is all F. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let's declare this one all 0. Now you can see it has been marked as black. So if we go to the browser, refresh, now you can see it's a black heading. And for white we can declare all of the values FF, FF and FF. And let's also give it some background color of red. So let's say FF0000, and let's save this, get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see we have a white heading text. So to declare some shades of gray we can use the same approach as we used with RGB, and that is using equal values. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and in here let's say for example B4, 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 and you can see it has been changed to light gray. So if we go to the browser, refresh, now you can see it is gray. And let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and make it a little bit darker. So let's say 787878, and now it will be a little bit darker. So let's get back to the browser, refresh, and now you can see it has been colored a little bit darker. Now sometimes you may see a 3-digit hex code in a CSS source. So the 3-digit hex code is the shorthand for some 6-digit hex codes. So the syntax would be hash RGB, where R is red, G is green, and B is blue, and can take values between 0 and F. So we can use the 3-digit hex code when both values in a 6-digit code are the same. So if we have FF00CC, we can write it as F0C2. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and in here you can see all are F, so we can declare it as a 3-digit code also. And in here you can also see that we have 787878. So we cannot apply the 3-digit code on this one because both values are not the same. So instead of this one, if it was for example let's say 0000, now we can apply this 3-digit code. So we can make this one 3 zeros. So if we save this now, get back to the browser, refresh, now you can see our hex values are still working. Now finally we have the CSS HSL colors. So HSL stands for hue, saturation and lightness. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let's press enter here, and let's say HSL, and then it will take hue and then saturation and then a comma lightness. So this is the syntax for HSL color values. So to show you this one, let's comment this, and I will duplicate this one, and let's comment this extra heading. So let's declare an HSL value for this. Let me remove all the code from here. Now we want to declare a color for it, so let's say HSL, and for the hue let's say 0, and for the saturation let's say 100%, and for lightness let's say 50%. Now let's save this, and you can already see that the color is being marked as red. So if we go to the browser now, refresh, now you can see we have a red color. So to explain the values, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and in here you can see that the hue is the degree on the color wheel, and it can take a value from 0 to 360, where 0 is red and 120 will be green and 240 degree will be blue. And for saturation, it is a percentage value, so 0% would mean a shade of gray and 100% would mean a full color. And for lightness, we also have percentage, so 0% is complete black and 50% is neither light or dark, and 100% will be complete white. So to make a green color, we can just change the hue value, for example to 120, and now it will become green. And if you go to the browser, refresh, you can see it is now green colored. And for the blue, we can make this hue value to 240, and now it will be blue. So if you refresh, you can see it's a blue heading. So in here you guys can see that the saturation is 100%, and this means that it is a pure color and no shades of gray, and 50% saturation will be 50% of gray, but you will still see the color. So if we make this 50 and save it, get back to the browser and refresh, now you can see now a little bit of gray has been added to our blue color. So if we make the saturation 0%, we will not or no longer see the color. So let's make it 0. So let me make it 0 and get back to the browser, refresh. Now you can see we cannot see the blue color and it is completely in gray. Now for the lightness, so let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and for the lightness we can describe as much light as we want. So to give this color 50% of light, it will mean 50% lightness, and if we describe it 0%, there won't be any light and it will be completely in black. So to show you this one, let's make it 0, and if we get back to the browser now, refresh, now you can see it is completely in black. And to make it white, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. We can make this one 100, and let's give this also a background color of let's say black to see this better. So let's save this, get back to the browser, refresh, and now you can see the HSL value for the color of the text is white. Now let's create some shades of gray using the HSL colors. So in HSL colors, we can define shades of gray by setting the hue and saturation to 0 and adjusting the lightness from 0% to 100% to get darker and lighter shades. So to show you this one, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and what I will do is for the HSL value, I will declare hue and saturation to 0, and for the lightness you can see it is 100%, which is completely white, and if we make it 50, it will become a little bit darker. So let's go to the browser and let's refresh, and now you can see it's a little bit darker rather than white. And to make it completely 0, or let's say 20%, and now if we go to the browser, refresh, now you can see it has been even changed to more darker color. Now this being done, next up what we have is the HSLA color value. So HSLA values are an extension of HSL color values with an alpha channel, which specifies the opacity of the color. So the syntax would be, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and the syntax would be something like this. So HSLA, and then we have the hue, and then saturation, and comma let's say lightness, and then comma alpha. So the alpha parameter is a number between 0.0, which is fully transparent, and 1.0, which is not transparent at all. So to show you an example of this one, let me change some values in here. So I will make the saturation to 100 and the lightness to 50% to make this one a red color, and then we wanna give this one some alpha channel, so let's say 0.5. So if we save this, get back to the browser, refresh, and now you can see it has some opacity. Now let's change the opacity and see its effect. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and let's make it 0.9. so let's go to the browser again, refresh. Now you can see the opacity has been removed a little bit, but we still have 0.1 opacity. So guys, this was everything about CSS colors. Now this being done, you have learned all about how to create colors in CSS and all the possible ways you can use to define a color for an HTML element. Now I hope this was informative and you find this video useful. If so, don't forget to give the thumbs up and a nice comment also. And if you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe too if you want more videos like this. So thanks for watching. See ya in the next video.